Hello, Fiveable. Can you hear me? Looks like it's just two of us, or three of us, which is great. You guys will have some one-on-one tutoring from me as I walk through today's lesson. So today is going to be kind of an extension on what we talked about last time, with a little focus on mean versus median, since those are two very, very important things. So for now, I'm Shane from Fiveable, hosting the AP Statistics course this year. Very excited. Like I said last time, this is my favorite course. I love teaching it, and I love answering any of your questions. So please, please, please use the Ask Question button below so you can ask me questions as we go along for today. All right, so like before, here's kind of the breakdown of how we are going to go through the first couple topics. I'm going to go live every Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you can't catch me there, I would highly suggest you register and rewatch them, because they're going to be super helpful, especially if it allows you to stop, rewind, do all that jazz. The first major topics, the three major topics that we're going to cover in AP Stat is going to be exploring data, which is usually how teachers open up statistics, designing studies, so designing different experiments or surveys to find out about a population, and then the normal curve. So those are going to be the three major topics. However, through that, we'll cover minor topics in there. And what you're going to get from me throughout the year, you're going to get exam tips, so different ways to kind of beat the exam and make sure you're giving the reader what they want. A lot of FRQs and multiple choice questions, because really the only way to get better at those is just to do them. And calculator tips. So these calculators right here are going to save your butt on the exam. So it's important that you know how to use it, because it's great if it just sits there, but it's even better if you can actually use it. And there's a lot more features that I'm going to introduce. Like today, you're going to get a really, really valuable resource. I'm going to connect with Ms. Duemeral and talk about how we can get this resource out to you. That's just going to make you ace free response questions as long as you put in the work. All right, so hang tight for that really, really valuable resource. All right, so the first question I like to ask is just get an idea of what book you're using. I've seen a lot of you here last time, so I think we all know, or I think I know what book you're using. But if you could go ahead and help me out, just type into the chat which one of these books you're using. These are the 4 most common books. However, you may be using something else, which is totally fine. Just type that book into the chat so I know. If for some reason you're not sure off the top of your head, that's fine. Just maybe send an email to us so I know, so I can kind of take a look at that book as well and see where you're at. All right, so first chapter is all about descriptive statistics. So the big topics in this unit are always going to be the graphs, right? How are we displaying data? As we gather all this data, how are we then displaying it? Shapes, so what is the shape of this data? Summary statistics, so now that we got all these different numbers and we got this into a data, how are we breaking it down? Particularly looking at mean versus median. So those are 2 measures of center that are important to know when to use one and when to use the other. And then TI graphing calculator notes. So a lot of the graphs that you're going to have to create on the AP exam can be done on your calculator. So we're going to take a look at that today. And then there are some other minor topics that we're going to cover in this descriptive unit statistics. So hang tight for that. And helpful resource coming today in about 2 slides. So let me show you what that's all about. So actually 1 slide. Here is the helpful resource that I'm going to share with you guys once I can figure out how to send this out to you. If you're a member of Fiveable, you will get this, and it's going to be really, really valuable, because as you can see, it breaks down every AP problem up to date and what chapter and what section it goes to in the Practice of Statistics book. So if you're using the Practice of Statistics, great, it's all there. If you're not, that's okay, because I have it broken down by topic. So chapter 1, here are all the AP free response questions that have ever been asked on the AP exam on that topic. So what I recommend all the time for my students to do is to go through these problems and just practice them and then look at the scoring guide. That is going to increase your score on the free response questions by a lot. just because you're getting used to reading how those readers are scoring you. So it's going to be really helpful to get you to score better. Also, it's probably going to get you to score better on your, not probably, it will get you to score better on whatever test you're getting in your class. So I will send that out to you. I'll connect with Mr. Emerald to see how we can get that out. All right, so get out your calculators. Now is the time. We're going to be using these a lot. So now is the time to get out your calculator. And we're going to focus on 4 main topics with our calculator. So the first is how do we actually graph using the calculator? That's that first topic. And I broke down all the different the different buttons you're going to have to press right there. And then you're going to have to zoom in on your statistics. So I broke down how you want to correctly get your window on the correct statistics. The trace button is also going to help you out. We'll learn about that. And then how do we actually gather summary statistics after we enter in the data? So if I would either screenshot this, we'll get this out to you. This is just like a quick little breakdown. Here's how you use the calculator for chapter 1. All right, so graphs. We talked about this in the last live cast. So if you weren't around last live class, make sure you go back and watch it. But basically, we have 2 types of data, and we present the graphs in 2 different ways. We have quantitative and we have categorical. So quantitative covers those 4. Again, we covered that in the last live, so I'm not going to go too far into it. Categorical is basically those 2 types of graphs is what we focus on. Okay, so we're going to actually practice how do we create these graphs on the calculator. So over here, I recorded my morning commute times to work for about 10 days. So the left is going to be the morning, and then I also calculated my afternoon commute times, which is going to be on the right side. And it's all in minutes. So we're going to take a look at how do we graph that using the TI-84. So make sure you have that out. If you have the Nspire calculator, just go ahead and comment in the section, on the comment section, and we'll make sure we help you out there. Okay, so I'm going to switch to my doc cam now so we can graph this data. Again, if you take your calculator out so you can graph along with us. All right, so here's the data. Let's see if I can get that to be a little better. There we go. All right, so here's our data. And here's our graphing calculator notes. So first thing we got to do is turn it on. Make sure you hit the on button right down there. And we want to enter in our data. So to enter in your data, you're going to go to Stat. You're going to go to Edit. And you're going to see some lists. This is where you're going to enter in the data. If for some reason there's data in your list, like let's say I had a couple numbers in my list, I'd go to the top, hit Clear, Enter. Oh, sorry, very top. Clear, Enter, and it should clear out your list. So now we're going to run through and type in this data. Please type it along with me. 48, enter, 43, enter, and so on. So we're going to enter the morning into list 1. And in list 3, or it might be list 2 for you, that's okay. I'm going to enter in the afternoon. You can tell some afternoons I fly home. Other afternoons, oops, that's a typo. Other afternoons takes me a while. That's California traffic, Bay Area traffic for you. Although LA was pretty bad too when I was living in LA. Okay, so I have all my data points and they should line up. You see right there, it says L110, L310. That's the 10th data point in my list. And I know I'm correct because I have 10 data points here. So it should be good to go. All right, so now how do we actually graph this? So you're gonna hit the second button up here, second, and then you're gonna hit the Y equals 2 button, which is just above the stat, or the second button. And it'll take you to this. You wanna hit enter, because we wanna plot our first graph. So we're gonna hit enter. We're gonna turn it on, and we're gonna choose the graph that we want. So we're gonna do a box plot for this one, which is that one right here. That's a modified box plot that will show you outliers. The one to the right is a regular box plot, which will not show you outliers. So we got modified, regular. I like to do the modified. And then we have to tell the calculator, okay, where did you get the data from, or where do you want me to graph the data? And that's all gonna be in L1 right there. Frequency 1 is fine. Mark just tells the calculator, how do you want it to show up on the graph? For a box plot, it's not going to matter. All right, so now how do I get the window correct? Because if I just hit graph right now, it might not go in the right area of this box plot. So you're going to hit the button zoom. You're going to go all the way down to number 9. Number 9 is zoom stat. So basically what it's going to do is it's going to tell the calculator, I want you to zoom in on the statistics that you have, or that I have inputted. So hit enter, and there's our box plot. But another important thing is to use this trace feature. So if you hit the button trace, it'll give you information like the min for your box plot. So right here I can see the minimum is 40, the Q1 is 42, the median is 44.5, and so on. And we're going to get into all this in a minute. But I first wanted to show you how do we just plot data. And we're going to go to a free response question in a little bit. We're going to go to the 2007 AP Stat free response question, because in that question they asked you to make a box plot or some sort of graphical display. And so I want to show you that this is connected to what you're actually going to get questioned on in the AP exam. All right, so I'm going to quickly go back to our PowerPoint. There we go. If we go to our PowerPoint, we'll take a look at our next. That's how you make graphs on the graphing calculator. And we just made a box plot, but you could have done a bunch of other ones. Well, just a stem plot or a histogram. Okay, so next one we're going to cover the different shapes. We also, the trace feature, Brandon, is super, super valuable. It's going to save you a lot of time. Thank you for that comment. That makes me feel so good. All right, so shapes. The shape we covered last time too. So I'm going to highly encourage you to go back to the different shapes. But I do want to remind us of the shapes that we have. So first is symmetric, approximately normal, skewed left, skewed right. Those are going to be the main ones that we use in AP Stats. But there are 2 other ones that I want to make you aware of just in case. Bimodal, 2 peaks. And then uniform means it's all the same shape. Okay, so we're going to go back to our data. I'm going to go back to our calculator, and we're going to talk about the shape of these distributions. All right, so here's my first distribution. I want to enter in my second distribution, so let's practice this one more time. So we're going to go Stat, Edit, and here's my L3. So now I want to graph my afternoon and compare it to my morning. So am I spending more time going to work in the morning or afternoon? So again, let's follow these steps. So we're going to hit second, y equals. Go down to plot 2 this time. So instead of hitting enter on plot 1, we're going to hit enter on plot 2. We're going to turn it on. We're going to hit the down button. And I want to turn it to that box plot. Now, if you remember from our last live cast, these calculators are kind of old, so you're not going to be able to just hit down to go to the box plot. It's going to skip right over it. You have to hit right, right, right. And boom, there's our second one. I put my afternoon times in L3, and everything else should be good to go. So now I'm going to hit zoom, number 9, and there it is. So again, using that trace feature, I can see what data it's coming from. So maybe I forgot, ooh, shoot, is this my morning or is this my morning? Is this my afternoon or is this my afternoon? Using the trace feature, you can actually see what list is coming from. So this is coming from list 1. I know list 1 was morning, so this is my morning commute. This is my afternoon. Looking at the 2 box plots, we can kind of see that they're both roughly symmetrical. So again, this is one of those things you're going to have to comment on in the AP exam. You want to plot it using a graphing calculator to save you time, and then describe it, which again, we'll get to all those features of describe, but we covered a lot of that in our last live session. So I won't spend too much time on it. All right, let's go back. Okay, the next big topic we're going to cover is summary statistics, which we really didn't cover on our last, not as much, on our last live session, so we're going to dive deep into that. So here are the different summary statistics that we have in stats. First is going to be the mean or the average. So if you total up everything, ooh, appreciate that question. How do we enter L3? Let's answer that right now. So to enter into a different list, you're going to hit the button that says Stat, and then hit Edit. Now, you may have used L2, which is totally fine. I don't have an L2 on my calculator. I think I probably deleted it a while ago, so I just used L3. But you might not have L3 either, so that's fine. You can use L4, L5. It really doesn't matter what list you enter it into. What really matters is that when you go to graph it using these steps right here, you're going to hit second y equals, go into your stat plot, and right here where it says X list, you want to make sure that that is from the data that you entered. So if you put your data into L2, that's totally fine. Just make sure that says L2. And to do that, and maybe that was your question, you want to hit the second button. And then if you look above all these numbers like 4, 5, 3, 2, 1, in blue or yellow, depending on what calculator you're using, it's going to say L and then the number it's above. So right here it says L3. So the second you hit the second button and then the number, like I'm going to hit L5, it'll input L5, or second 4, L4. I guess you can't hit more than once. So second 4, it'll do L4. Second 5 will do L5. But for me, I want second L3. That's a great question, Brendan. Thank you for asking. And then hit graph, zoom 9, and it should work. Did that answer? Cool. Yeah. Yeah, the second button helps a lot. All right, so let's dive right back into it. So here's our summary statistics: the mean, median, standard deviation, IQR, range, and quartiles. Big one that we're going to want to spend some time on is the standard deviation. Here's the formula for it. However, you don't need to remember the formula. That's way too much, way too complicated. We have our calculators that gets us all these summary statistics, so we don't have to do that. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the summary statistics for our data on my morning commute times. All right, so let's take a look here. To get your summary statistics, we're going to use this bottom part right here. So to do that, we're going to hit statistics. We're going over to calculate. Since there's only one variable here, which is how long it took me to get to work, we're going to go to one variable statistic. Enter. Now, you're going to have nothing blinking here. And this is where we want to enter in what list we want to run our summary statistics for. So if you hit the second button and your first list, I'm going to do L1. Hit enter. It's going to give you a whole bunch of numbers, which we're going to break down right now. Now, careful hint, don't hit enter again, because if you hit enter again, you won't be able to scroll down to see all the other data points. So that first X bar is going to be your average or your mean. So the mean commute time of my morning was 45 minutes. The next one is going to say, hey, if you summed up all your data points, what would it equal? Well, it would equal 450. This is just if you took all the sums of your commute times and then squared it, what would it be? That SX is going to be your standard deviation. So that complicated formula that we just saw, the calculator calculates that for you, and it's right there. Cool. See another question? Great question. Question is, on the AP exam, will we have to be able to do standard deviation without our calculators? No, you get your calculator on the multiple choice part and the free response part. So anytime they ask you to do standard deviation, don't do it, just use the calculator. I show my students the standard deviation formula, but I don't make them calculate it by hand because it's kind of a waste of time. Our calculator does it for us. There's no need for us to calculate by hand. Great question. This N right here is going to tell you how many data points you have. That's a good way to check to make sure that you have the correct amount of data and it's not, you didn't make a mistake. So I know I calculated it for 10 days, so my N should be 10. And then you're going to want to hit down because that's going to give you the minimum. So what was the shortest amount of time it took me to get to work in these 10 days? Q1 is going to be 42. So that represents the 25th percentile of my commute times. So that means 25% of my commute times were between 42 and 40. The median is going to be the middle commute time, right? So it's going to be, if you ordered all my commute times from least to greatest and found the middle one, it would be 44.5. So that's the 50th percentile. And again, we're going to get to some multiple choice problems that asks about that. Q3, the 75th percentile, and the maximum. Now I could also do that for, if I hit clear, my afternoon times. Again, I'm going to hit stat, calculate, one variable, second L3. Let me do that one more time just in case you missed it. Stat, calculate, all down here. One variable statistic, and then I have to tell the calculator where do you want those statistics to be run, and I'm going to hit second L3, enter. And there it is. A little bit different. All right, we're going to use this for an AP problem in a little bit. Let's head back to the PowerPoint. All right, some other topics. Two main topics I want to talk about, and then we'll get to some AP problems. First, identifying outliers. So they might ask you to identify outliers on the AP exam. And here's how you do it. It's called the outlier rule. So I'd go ahead and write this down, take a screenshot, whatever you need to do to make sure you remember this. So the outlier rule for lower outliers, so something that is smaller than our general trend. You're going to take whatever your quartile 1 is, whatever number your quartile 1 is, subtract 1.5 times your IQR. So you're going to take Q1, subtract 1.5 times your IQR. And then you're going to do kind of the opposite for the upper end, which is going to be Q3 plus 1.5 times your IQR. So let me show you what that would look like with my morning times. So in our morning times, or this is the afternoon, so we'll just do the afternoon. In the afternoon, my IQR, we first got to calculate my IQR. Now that's going to be Q3 minus Q1. So here, Q3 was 59 minus Q1, which was 28. 59 minus 28, 1 is 31. Now remember that IQR rule was, or that outlier rule, I'm sorry, was 1.5 times your IQR for the upper one plus Q3. See a question? I'm going to pause for a minute. Why 1.5? Great question, Jeff. So why do we use 1.5? That is, it allows you to take your IQR, so whatever your interquartile range is, make it a little bit further, and then anything outside of that is unreasonable. So the 1.5 is just part of the formula that statisticians have determined this is kind of what we're gonna require to be an outlier. So this is what, anything outside of this is just too far for us to say it's a part of the general trend. Great question. Okay, so what was our Q3? Well, our Q3 was 59. So 59 plus 1.5 times 31. So let's calculate that now. 1.5 times 31. So that's going to be 46.5 plus 59. So any commute time that took me longer than 105.5 is going to be an outlier. My highest one was 85. So it looks like there are no outliers on the upper end for my commute time going home in the afternoon. Now, let's see about our lower quartile. So it's going to be similar to this one right here, except we're going to take Q1 and subtract the 1.5 times my IQR. So I know Q1 was 28 minus 31 times 1.5. So 28 minus 4.6. Oh, I can already see what's going to happen. This is going to be a negative number, which obviously you cannot travel a negative amount. So if for some reason it took me negative 18.5 minutes to get to work, that'd be super dope. I'd be pretty happy with that. But that can't happen. So there's going to be no outliers on the lower end of my morning commute times. So that's how you calculate the IQR. They may have you do it on a multiple choice. I've never seen it, but that doesn't mean they're not going to do it. But it's good to know that there's an actual rule. A lot of the times, all they really want is that you can identify a potential outlier. All right, there's one other thing I want to talk about, and that is the effects of changing units. So I've seen this once or twice on the AP exam, so I want to make sure we discuss it. All right, so what happens if we change the units? Does that change anything about our problem? And the answer is no. So we could change my morning commute times, and let me go back to that. We could change this from minutes to, let's say, hours, and the shape wouldn't change, but the other summary statistics would. So the shape would still be the same. However, the IQR would be different, standard deviation would be different. All those things would just be a little bit different based off of how you change your data. Later on in the year, we'll actually see it a little bit more. So I'm going to pause on that. But it is important to know that if you do change from minutes to hours or change your units, the shape's not going to change, but everything else will. And we'll talk about that later on. So here's another resource that I highly recommend my students going to. And this, with that Excel sheet that I'll get out to you guys, is going to be super, super helpful to get you a higher score on the AP exam. And essentially, it's just the College Board's website with all the AP free response problems. Here are the two that I'm going to do. I'm looking at time. I might not get through both, but I'll stick around if you guys want some extra help on that. I think the more important one is going to be 2016 free response. So we're going to get going there. But take down this website. It'll take you right to all the AP exams that have ever existed, minus any of the ones that you can't see and teachers can. So there are a handful of tests that only teachers can see that students can't. And then we'll do some multiple choice problems as well. All right, so I'm going to take this away. And let's go ahead and take out the AP Stats 2016 problem. You may have seen this. This is super famous. We call this the Robin Tips problem in the AP Stats circles. But here it goes. So Robin works as a server in a small restaurant where she can earn a tip or extra money from each customer she serves. The histogram below shows the distribution of her 60 tip amounts for one day. Now, you might be wondering, Shane, why do they need to tell me what a tip is? They're very careful about making sure that every student has an equal opportunity on this test. So let's say you're a student who maybe doesn't know what a tip is. They want to make sure that doesn't prevent you from answering the question. So rest assured, any question that you get on the AP exam should explain anything that might not be obvious to the normal person. Okay, so We have all of her tips. First thing I want to mention is this is a histogram. Again, we talked about that on the last live Fiveable, so go back and watch that if you need a little bit more help. But this is a histogram. All right, we have frequency here, so the number of tips. So she got between a 10 and a 12.5 tip one time. And here's the tip amount, so how much it actually costs in dollars. First thing we want to do is write a few sentences describing the distribution of tips shown. So if you remember correctly from our last Fiveable session, there's a quick mnemonic device that helps us make sure we get every single point on a question like this on the AP exam. And that device is we CUSS. And if we have 2 or more, we are BSers. And when I say 2 or more, I mean 2 or more data sets we want to compare. But since we only have 1, we actually don't need to compare because there's nothing to compare to. So we're going to start with the CUSS. Remember, the C represents the center. So what is the center of the distribution? Now, I would highly recommend, if you can't calculate the exact center of the distribution, I would recommend that you give it an interval. So some interval that it happens to be in between. And we'll talk about the exact interval in a minute. Next, the U is going to be unusual. So anything unusual. So that's gaps, that's outliers. And again, we covered that in our last Fiveable session. So go back and watch that if you need a little help there. The first S is going to represent shape. So what's the shape of the distribution? We covered that in our last one as well. And the last S is going to be spread. What's the spread of the distribution? We use standard deviation. We use IQR. We can also use range. The BS just represents be specific. So make sure that you're using context. So be specific, but also make sure it's basically just saying use context. All right. So let's go ahead and start with, let's do shape. So as we look at this, we can see that the shape is skewed to the right. Remember, use that tail. So if you see here, it kind of tails off at the end. So because the tail is on the right, we call it skewed to the right. So, oops, sorry about that. So we want to say the distribution of Robin's tips is skewed to the right. Now, with that response, we got 2 of the 5 things that we need. First, we got the shape skewed to the right, and we got be specific. So we talked about it being Robin's tips. So we do not need to talk about Robin's tips or context anymore. We've gotten that full point. We're good to go. Next, we can talk about the median or the mean. So it depends on which one you want to talk about first. I'm going to go ahead and talk about the median because it seems to be a little bit easier because I know she had 60 tips. So if she has 60 tips, the middle one is going to be 30. So I know it's going to come somewhere in here. So I can say the median. I can't tell you the exact one, but I can say the median of the distribution. Again, I don't have to use context because I already talked about it there. The median of the distribution is between 2.5 and $5. Again, ask me any questions if any of this doesn't make sense. Ask me any questions if you want to make sure. So we got the median. I'm going to go ahead and cross that out now. Or the center, I'm sorry. Now anything unusual. So is there anything unusual about this graph? The answer is yes. This little gap right here. So we want to talk about that there's an unusual gap and potential outlier. So we want to say something like there is a potential outlier at 20 to 22.5. Now, the reason we have to say potential and not definite is because we cannot use that IQR rule that we used earlier to calculate if that's a outlier, because we don't know the exact numbers of each tip. And that's the one downside of a histogram, is it doesn't tell you the exact items. It just gives you a bin, right? It just gives you a width. So we know that there were 25 tips between $0 and $2.5, but I can't tell you if it was 1.79, if it was 2.49. I can't tell that from a histogram. We would need a stem and leaf plot, but that takes a long time. So we got unusual, we got center, we got shape, we got context. The last thing we need to do is get spread. So let's go ahead and talk about spread. I'm going to scoot this down just a little bit so we can see. But essentially spread, we can use one of many different items. We can use the IQR, we can use the range, we can use standard deviation. But since this is a histogram, the easiest one to use is range, because we don't know the IQR, we don't know the standard deviation. And again, the reason we don't know that is because these just tell us the bin. It doesn't tell us exact numbers. For us to calculate IQR, for us to calculate standard deviation, we need the exact numbers. So what we're going to do is we're just going to say the range of tips is from 0 to $22.5. That will get us full credit on the AP exam. And we got that last one, spread. We're good to go. Let me show you what that looks like. Here is the scoring guide. Again, this is what I want to recommend you do with that resource that I give you a little bit later. Do the problems and then see how you would score. So here for part A, essentially correct if the response includes these 5 components, right? And essentially that's CUSS and be specific. So again, this helps you get everything right. First one is you need to say the shape. Then you need to tell me, okay, is there anything unusual where there might be an outlier, or you can talk about the gap. Next is the center. Now the center, you could have talked about the median, which we did, or the mean. Next, we want to talk about the variability or the spread. So that comes right here when we say, yep, tip amounts vary from 0 to 2.25. And last, context. So did you bring up tips, right? And we did. Boom. That's why I recommend my students using CUSS. It's a quick and easy way to make sure you get full credit on the AP exam. All right, so now we're going to take a minute. I'm going to cover this up just so it doesn't bother us to look at the next problem, which really focuses on the difference between mean and median. So part B asks, one of the tip amounts was $8. If the $8 tip had been 18, what effect would this have on the following statistics? Justify your answer. All right, so let's take a look. The mean. Now remember, mean is when you add up all the data points. So we add up all the data points and then divide by how many we have. Well, we know that we have 60 tips, right? So I have 60 tips. And I know the increase from 8 to 18 is $10. So my mean is going to go up 1/6 of a dollar, or 17 cents. All right, how'd you do that again? Slow down. The total we divide by, well, we take all of the tips added together and then divide by the total tips, which is 60. If I were to total up the tips again, when it went from 8 to 18, I'm going to have $10 more. When I divide it by 60, that breaks down to 1/6. So my mean is going to increase by 0.17. So I want to write that down too. The mean would increase by 17 cents because I'm adding $10 to the total. Now, how would this affect the median? So we said our median down here was about $2, between $2 and $5. So that $8 was already on the right, or on the upper 50% of our median. So if I change that from 8 to 18, it's not going to change it to go to the left or the lower 50% of my data. So actually the median would not change. Because the current median is below $8. So moving it up wouldn't make a sense. It wouldn't make any sense. Sorry, it is all stuck together. I'll fix that next time. All right, so let's take a look at what the scoring sheet looks like. Here's the perfect response to that, which we kind of talked about. The mean, if it was increased, it would increase by 10, because when you divide 10 by 60, it's 17 cents. And then the median would not change because the current median is already higher than that. So essentially what that question is asking is, let's go to the intent of the question. Can you determine the effect of changing one data value on the mean and median? So how will it affect the mean and the median when we change one data value? That's what it's looking for. I would highly recommend you take a minute later tonight or tomorrow or sometime this week to look at 2007 AP Stats question. Feel free to shoot me an email, or next live session, ask me about it. I'll have it around. But now I do want to go over some free response questions. Or I'm sorry, some multiple choice questions. So give me a minute. Let me find this. All right. Let's take a look. And please, please, please stop me and ask me questions. That's also the fun part about my job, is when you ask me questions. All right. So here's about a stem and leaf plot. The population of the population of the United States is aging, though less rapidly in other developed countries. At the right is a stem plot of the percents of residents aged 65 and older in each of the 50 states, according to the census in 2000. There are two outliers. Alaska has the lowest percentage of older residents, and Florida has the highest. What percentage is Florida? So for right here, it's going to be key to look at the key. So when we look at the key, and this is all about describing data. Now that we have data graphed, how do we describe it? So the key here says the stem is going to represent the first part, and then the leaf, so stem and leaf plot, is going to represent after the decimal. So if we know Florida is right here, then we know the stem is going to be 17, which is going to be the first part of the decimal. And then the 10th spot is going to be what this is, which is 6. So it's going to be 17.6%. There you go. Here's how we know some of these are incorrect. you can never have above 100%. So if anyone ever says, I'm 110% sure that's the correct answer, you can say you're wrong. The most you can be is 100%. That's an obvious incorrect answer. 5.7 would be totally wrong because it's not even on here, but they're trying to get you to go for the lowest one instead of the highest one. 57, again, that's just reading the incorrect key. And 13.8, my guess is it's right here. It's not the average. It's probably not the median. Not sure what they're getting with there, but D is the only answer that makes sense. All right, let's dive to the next one. Again, if I'm moving too fast, please let me know. Next one, the interquartile range for the distribution of 50 states in the previous question. So let's go back to our previous question and see what's the IQR of this data set. So remember, IQR is the 75th. It's going to be Q3 minus Q1. So we got to find the quartile. Well, if there are 50 states times 0.25, that'll tell me where the quartile is. I could also enter this data into my calculator to get the IQR. And since we did some calculator tips today, why don't we do that? So hit the button that says stat. Let's do this. We're going to hit the button that says stat. Edit. Remember, let's clear these lists. Clear, enter. Clear, enter. And let's type in the data points. 5.7, enter. 8.5, enter. 9.6, 9.7. I'll stop talking now. 10.6, and we should have 100 or 50 data points when we're all done. Calculator is really going to help you save time on the AP exam. So make sure you know how to use it. We'll be using it all year on Fiveable. So I will get you prepared, even if your teacher doesn't. I'll teach you those trace features that maybe your teacher doesn't. Also, it's good practice to do these because sometimes you make mistakes, and it's better to make a mistake on your homework or with me on Fiveable than it is on the AP exam. Because a mistake with me is only going to cost you nothing. A mistake on the AP exam might cost you credit. And again, our goal here at Fiveable is to make sure you get a 5 on the AP exam, so no matter where you go, you get credit on the AP exam. And just taking statistics before you get to college is super important, so that when you walk into your first AP stats class, or your first stats class, I should say, you're not completely lost. You're like, oh, standard deviation, I've heard that before. Your professor might have you do it all by hand, in which case you can say, no, I'm going to do it by calculator. Yes, I see a question. I'm going to pause and answer this question. How do you know to use 0.25 in 50 times 0.25? Great question. So how did I know when I calculated Q1 to do 50 times 0.25? That's an awesome question. So Q1 is the 25th percentile. So if I convert 25th percentile to a decimal, it's going to go to 0.25. So you can think of it like this. If I have let's say 4 commute times. Let's say one time it took me 10, 20 minutes to get to work, 30, and 40. These are the different quartiles, right? This is the min. This is Q1. This is the median, Q3, and the max. So Q1 is the 25th percentile. So if I multiply 4, because there are 4 numbers here, times 0.25, I'm going to get 1, which will tell me the first quartile. Sorry, this is the first quartile. So you just take the total amount of data points, multiply it by your percentile, and that'll tell you where your percentile is. So this is the first number. Okay? Hopefully that helped. If not, ask again. All right, let's dive back into it. So I have all my data, and I know it's correct. Oh, it's incorrect, right? I have 52 instead of 50. So I made an error somewhere in here. Now, for the sake of time, I'm not going to go back and check it. Or yeah, you know what? Let me do that real quick. This will be a good learning process for us. So 5.7, 8.5, 9.6, 9.7, 9.9. Boom. 1, 2, 2, 6. 12, see 2 of those. 4. Oh, there's my extra one. Four, 5, 5. Oh, there's my extra one there, and I'm good. So remember, to get back to our summary statistics, let's use our notes here. So we're going to hit stat, calculate one variable, and I entered my data into L1, hit enter, scroll down, my Q1, my Q3. So my Q3 minus my Q1. Q3 is 13. Q1 is 11.7. So the solution here is going to be 13 minus 11.7, which is going to give me 1.3. What happened? Let's see. Maybe I entered in my data wrong again. Did I do that? Let's see real quick. Hang on. Let me double check I have the right data. That's right. Oh, 13.5. This is 13.5 according to my notes. So I must have entered something in incorrectly, which should give me 1.8. Sorry about that. I entered in something incorrectly. That's all right. All right, let's go to the next one. I like this question because it focuses on mean versus median. So for the histogram below, what is the proper ordering of the mean and median? Oops, what happened here? Minimize this. Sorry about that. Okay, so first of all, what's the shape of this distribution? Well, let's see where it's not symmetrical, but it is kind of skewed to the right. So if something is skewed to the right, we know exactly what's bigger, the mean or the median. Here's why. Pull up this. Okay. So something is skewed to the right. These data points down here are going to pull the mean lower. But my median is going to be somewhere up here. So if something is skewed right, your mean is smaller than your median. So for this one, it would have to be 1 is the mean, 2 is the median. So that would be, that's possible. We'll keep that. 2 is the median, 3 is the mean, also possible. C, 1 is the median, 2 is the mean. Nope, because that means that the median is smaller. That's not right. Down here, 1 is the mean, 2 is the median. Possible. Let's keep it. Oh, wait, 3 is the mean. Yeah, possible. Let's keep it. 2 is the mean, 3 is the median. Also possible. We'll keep it. So let's go back and double check our answers. So if 1 is the median, 2 is the median, 1 is the mean, 2 is the median, that can't be true because it's just too far down. So we're going to get rid of that. Although it's true for this statement, it's just too far below. these numbers here are going to affect the mean, a little bit more. 2, the median down here. Ooh, that one actually is incorrect because that means the median is lower than the mean. So not going to work. D, 1 is the mean, 2 is the median. Again, that's just too far away from each other. So the best answer is going to be E, the mean, just a little bit lower than the mean. So what that also means is that if we have something that's skewed to the left, our mean is going to be larger than our median. That's a really, really important rule that I would write down. I would highlight. That's probably going to be on your test. I know I put it on my test. Yeah, definitely recommend writing that down. Also, if something is symmetrical, it means, no worries, no worries. The mean is about equal to the median. All right, cool. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop there for now. I'm running a little bit low on time. Appreciate you guys watching this. I really, really hope it was helpful. If you have any feedback at all, please be sure to make a comment in the comment section. I'll stick around for any questions that you have for the next maybe 5 minutes. But if not, hope you enjoyed this. Look forward to seeing you next time. I always have fun with this. I love talking about stats. I love helping other people find value in stats. So once again, please subscribe. Please become a member. You're going to get access to all these tips, all these resources that just going to make you a better stats student in general. And I see another question. I'm going to go ahead and answer that now. So you're asking about the resource paper. Yes, I'm going to get that out to you, even if I just have to email it to you. But I'm going to connect with Amanda to see how we can get that out to you. It is an Excel spreadsheet, so make sure you have Excel. If not, I can save it as a PDF and get it out to you as a PDF. You know what? That's probably better. We'll do PDF, but I will get it out to you, even if I just have to email you separately. Any other questions? Appreciate that. Brendan, Jeff, appreciate you guys. Keep asking those questions. You guys are doing the work that you need to in order to get a 5 on that exam. So keep doing it. It's going to pay off, I promise you. Great question. Where can we find more multiple choice questions? You can use your textbook. Your textbook should, at the end of each chapter, have more multiple choice questions. I'll link up with Ms. Duemeral and see if we can get you a list of my multiple choice questions, send it out to you guys. But for now, you can do, I'll write it down. So you can use your textbook, and that's the end of each chapter. Actually, if you go to this website, it's called quizzes.com, and search for a quiz. And if you type like AP Stats Chapter 1, you should get some more free response question. Also, you could use Kahoot.it or create Kahoot, and you can find some more questions there. Also, the Barron's. So Barron's has some multiple choice flashcards. Check it out there. Where can I find multiple choice questions? Here you go. All right here. Next question. All right, so another question. Another thing, in percentiles, and percentiles, how is a percent, for example, 85%, different from the 85th percentile? So they're not different if I'm understanding your question correctly. So what 85% Well, maybe let me break this down and see if it helps. So percentile is where you fall in all the data. So for example, if we have a lot of percentiles that are used on the SAT for college. So if you fall in the 85th percentile, that means, and we'll get to the normal curve in chapter 3, if this is the 50th percentile, that means your 85th percentile is over here. So you scored better than 85% of the people. Now, let's say you took a math test and scored an 85%. That doesn't mean you're in the 85th percentile. Percentile is related to how everyone else did. So just because you scored an 85% doesn't mean you're in the 85th percentile. Let's say you scored an 85%, but 30 other students scored 100%. So you're actually going to perform in the bottom of relative to your other students. So if this was a normal curve, if 100%, 30 students scored that, that's going to be around here. So you're, this is the 50th percentile, half the data. So you would probably be over here. So once again, percentile means where you fall in the data. Percentage just means the percent you got on the exam, or the proportion, I should say. Hopefully that was helpful, if I understood your question correctly. Are you two finishing chapter 1, or where are you in your scope and sequence? Absolutely. Have you had your first test? Okay. And is your chapter 2 the normal curve? Okay. So, okay. I might rearrange that, and then next week we'll talk about the normal curve. Especially if you're just starting it. That's probably why you had that question. Okay. And Jeff, where are you? Cool. All right. So in my class, we did designing studies, which you're going to do in a little bit. But for the sake of this, I'll switch it, go to the normal curve, and we'll get you guys ready for that. It's one of my favorite chapters. You'll be hearing me say that a lot because I do love all the chapters. But the normal curve is super beneficial in whatever you do outside of AP Stats, just because you're going to need to compare results and see if things are abnormal. And the normal curve helps you do that. So next week, we'll do normal curve. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, I really appreciate your time. Like I said before, you all putting in the work right now is going to help you in, it's going to help you now, but also in 7 months when we take that AP exam. So you're doing the right work. Keep up these habits. These habits are going to make you just a better college student. So keep that up as well. Yeah. And thanks for your time. Have a good night.